Okay. Hello, my name is Mark Meyer. I'm from a university in Boston called Northeastern University, and I'm here to speak with you today on behalf of the KICT Mentoring Center on planning frameworks for scale-ups. And we're going to try to have a focus on semiconductor systems. So that's what we're going to do today. A little bit of background about myself. I went to school at Harvard and MIT. I didn't have much fun at Harvard, but I had a lot of fun at MIT. Oh, great times. Out of MIT, I started my first software company, was a real-time operating system company. We then went on to very rapid, fast databases for manufacturing environments. I've started companies in the cybersecurity area in the healthcare industry, and a number of companies in the analytics space for different applications. After my first company, I went back and finished up my PhD at MIT and became a professor at Northeastern University, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the director of an entrepreneurship center. I started their entrepreneurship programs, and I do a lot of work with companies through Northeastern University and what we call executive education. My innovation consulting practice, which I started maybe 20 years ago, I've had the fortune of working across most industries with industry leaders, many of whom use semiconductor type of systems. And you'll see some of these examples in the discussion today. And most of that consulting is in the area of next-gen systems design, platform architectures, in internal organic enterprise growth. That's what I do, as opposed to mergers and acquisitions. I have good connections around the world. In Korea, I work with the Korean ICT Mentoring Center in Pangyo. In India, I do a lot of work with the Gandhi Institute of Technology and Management in entrepreneurship. And then I've had long-standing relationships in Europe with the Technical University of Delft, which, if you don't know it, it's sort of like the MIT of that part of the world. Great institution. So that is Mark Meyer in a nutshell. And I do love Korea. I do love Korean technology companies. I really love Korean food. I really love hiking in the Korean mountains. It's a wonderful country you have, and you should really, I'm sure you appreciate it, and I certainly do. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit slower from here on out, and we'll just go on to my topics, and hopefully you can all understand my English, and yeah, I'll slow it down a little bit. So I have 4 topics that I wish to discuss, assuming that you have your first system or product and you want to expand it. The first topic is developing a product or services portfolio. Very few companies make it on a onesie, a single product. They need to have a family of products or a family of systems or services. The second topic is to keep pushing the creation of compelling designs that are breakthrough types of products or systems. The third topic is then to develop enabling internal product platforms to appreciate the efficiencies in R&D and production. And then the last topic that I wish to discuss is doing and really focusing on business development in the area of selling partnerships with bigger companies. In most of the semiconductor business, you are going to be a design-in, just like in my operating system or database software companies. Nobody ever sees the name of our products on the outside of the box, but we're the brains that make it work on the inside, part of the componentry. But to get there, you need to have design wins, and to get design wins, you need to have a compelling value proposition, and you need to have very good relationships with a few large companies. So we'll end up by talking about how important that really is and how to get it done, or to try and get it done, being based here in Korea. So those are my 4 topics. So before we start, I appreciate that being in the semiconductor electronics and systems business is not that easy these days. The projected sales in the years ahead are kind of flat. They're not great. PCs and gaming consoles and the trade wars between China and the United States and the oversupply of RAMs and DRAMs and the like make it a pretty tough climate for the general purpose semiconductor market. But all you have to do is look around and you can find opportunities that we might call niches or segments where there's tremendous opportunities for growth. And so you need to think and focus on these. So cloud infrastructure is definitely going to make a rebound. It's here to stay. COVID has only reinforced that. 5G, the new type of Wi-Fi, in the United States, and I see here in Korea with Hyundai, electronic cars in self-driving vehicles, they're real. They're here to stay. It's not going to go away. So even though car sales in general will be flat in the years ahead until the economy recovers, the growth in electric vehicles, in self-driving vehicles, is only going to increase. And that also includes industrial vehicles, such as tractors from Caterpillar or Komatsu. Lots of opportunities here in that space. AI special purpose chips are only going to be increasing in the years ahead. Robotics in all sorts of venues. Medical technologies because of COVID, just ventilators alone, the sales of these equipment and the need for smart ventilators, for smart medical equipment is only accelerating. And then my favorite of all in the area that I've been working in myself in the last few years is in the Internet of Things. I have heard some Korean entrepreneurs not be as excited about IoT as I think they should be. They think that it's taking longer to catch on. Well, I've seen across my corporate innovation work that it's really catching on like fire across many, many different industries. And all these IoT applications are going to need special controllers, FPGAs. A lot of them have systems on chips. A lot of them are doing very intelligent vision AI detections of issues or problems, so need these GPUs. There's a lot of activity, and then downstream activity in terms of gathering the data through wireless devices and having software to basically assess and analyze it and issue alerts. So IoT, I think, is here to stay. And if all these different areas, so I thought, where could Korea really be a world-class leader in semi? If you're not working for Samsung, which is one of the giants, but if you're going into the subsegments, it's really in these special purpose IoT applications. They will be pervasive. They'll be everywhere. It's never going to go away. So these are all areas that excite me, even though the general market feels somewhat depressed now. You should not be depressed. There are opportunities for growth. So here's some more depressing data. Having said that, on this screen, the general purpose IC market is expected to decline by 15% during the COVID and just grow marginally in the year ahead. General purpose CPUs and so forth, wireless communications, just hardly growing. You can see the negative numbers here. Cell phone MPUs, negative 3% this year. Different sorts of things are only not that exciting. But if we look over on the right, look at industrial other special purpose logic FPGAs. Growth rate of 37%. That's the IoT and robotic stuff we're talking about. Cell phones with the 5G coming in is going to be very exciting. Predicted to grow by 17% this year. It's not shown here, but the whole energy management area, power management analog, I guess that's it. I would think that would be growing because of the need for energy efficient chips and systems. That is definitely coming on stream with Apple and other companies. I think the whole energy efficiency area is going to be very, very strong in the years ahead. So having said all that, yep, there are a lot of negative numbers here, but there are interesting areas where the growth is going up. So let's get into our 4 main points. Let's talk about the first one. Again, I'm assuming as mentors or entrepreneurs, you already have your original product concept, your initial customer value proposition, which is what your secret sauce is, what OEM or system it's specially designed for, who's the end user, what they need. Let's say you have your first target system, you have your initial lead application or user or OEM. Now we're talking about growth. So when I think about growth from a technical perspective, I think about next-gen FPGAs. I think about graphics processing units. I'm seeing a lot of applications where the wizardry on vision recognition, vision AI, just really quite interesting, and multi-modalities. ASICs, systems on chips, more complete systems on a chip, really special purpose programming. We'll look at an example of these in a second. And then I think about complete specialized subsystems or sub-assemblies. And I think as somebody who gets domain expertise in a specific niche, one needs to consider the transmission of data downstream and even getting into the software business in terms of providing analytics on top of the streaming data. This is in a world of IoT. So there are many, many opportunities. In Boston, many of my students are R&D managers in local companies in New England, of which there's a number of semiconductor companies. And it's really interesting to see where they're heading into these specialized applications. So here's an example of one of them. We talk about going from a onesie into a suite of products. This is a handheld X-ray machine with solid-state detectors, lots of special purpose processors in here, special chips, and you see the handheld device on the top with a mobile app on the side, and you can see three different applications. On the far left is for customs inspection. This is the United States, not Korea. This is where people drive across borders and they have drugs and weapons. On the left, we have the customs looking for drugs and weapons in tires, seats, and dashboards. People in customs looking at private small jets coming in. In the middle, you have the first responders, who tend to be not customs officials, but policemen and firemen, or the FBI. And they're running into a train station and they're looking for bombs because they've received a tip or an alert that a terrorist is on the loose. Again, this is the United States. And then on the far right is the Marine application, which is the Coast Guard. And they're looking for many of the same things that the individuals or the users on the left are looking at. But on the right here, they're looking for drugs, they're looking for concealed cargo, and they have to penetrate through different types of materials, fiberglass, and different sorts of materials to actually see what might be hidden underneath. So the trick here is that you might initially start at one application and then you might extend to the others in your portfolio. This is a company that was a small division of GE, is actually acquired by GE, and then had an initial footprint over on the left and then expanded to the right. And all the while it was leveraging its special components in terms of X-ray shielding, a little touch interface, touch GUI, Bluetooth connections, and different sorts of communications and analytics software up on the cloud. This is how a company grows. If you're a one-trick pony, it's great to get started that way, but then you need to think about expanding. Here's another company that's in Boston. This individual who is now the general manager in the United States of this Finnish company, which was quite small when he was my student about 20 years ago, and now it's grown substantially. This particular student is now running North America for them, and when he was my student, we thought about how to expand from their very niche market, which was special purpose sensors with all sorts of electronics stuffed into them to measure temperature, wind, humidity, pressure, and so forth in outside temperature monitoring applications. And 15 years later, if you look at this company, it's not so little anymore. It's a global company, and they're the premium leader in weather and environmental monitoring. And what my student Jerry did is he took them from the outside environment into the inside environment. So on the left, you see air quality monitoring and prediction and meteorology on the far left. And then next to it, you see demanding industrial processes, where you need to look at humidity and temperature and all sorts of things for gases and films and materials. And the same thing in power generation. So he took them inside the building, and it's really grown the company tremendously. On the lower left, you can see different pictures of sensors for the original application, and then on the right, different types of sensors for the inside of manufacturing plants. I have a little framework here where we array the different market applications for this company: weather, energy, industrial, which is what my student took them into, and then he took them into life sciences, which in Boston, it's the mecca of life sciences now. It's really quite interesting, and it's now coming on very strongly in Korea as well. So the outdoor versus the indoor, specific segments within these two areas. And then if we look at the array of growth for this company, it first started off in the sensors, doing its own sub-assemblies, probably sourcing different sorts of chips from Asia to do different types of sensing. And then it went into systems on chips and then full systems, the IoT space, and then offering cloud data services to its customers. So this is called value chain migration, from sensors to systems to services. And then this is called adjacent market growth, from weather to energy to industrial to life sciences. We call it adjacent because they're close in. They're not too far away. There's a logical case that the technology can be leveraged to these applications. So here we go. This was first and second generation. Third generation was my student. Then he took them into fourth generation, and he's now taking them into cloud data services. It's a pathway for growth. If you are a startup and you're just down at number one here, you have your initial application, you need to start mapping out your future, because investors are going to expect to see this growth strategy. So here's the general template that I like to work with people, that shows your different types of end user segments and your different use cases or different types of offerings. And then within inside of each segment, you can look at sales, growth rates, the leading competitors. When you lay out this grid, you identify the fastest growing segments, the ones where there's competitors you don't want to really fight. You'd rather fight with people who are small companies like yourselves. And from all this, with a combination of size and growth and competition, you see where you can take your product in the years ahead. And that is the story that you need to sell to an investor. Let's look at a couple of local examples, and this is where Professor Meyer starts to get warmed up and he takes off his jacket. Now, up on the right is a famous semiconductor entrepreneur in the United States. His name is Bernie Gordon. He's a great philanthropist. He's started a number of programs at different universities called the Gordon Engineering Institutes, really around New England. He started a company that was a niche player doing computerized tomography, imaging, primarily for medical applications. If you ever hear of CT scanning, that's Bernie Gordon. Turns out Bernie is a distant cousin of mine. I actually have never met the guy. He's now retired, and I should have met him because we're not our ages. He's probably 20 years older than me, but just never ran into each other. He's the distant side of the family. But he's built a heck of a company. It's $400 million a year. It's focused on imaging, electronics, and now software. So their first application was computed tomography. It's called the CT scan. You can look at a heart or a brain or different parts of the body, and the power waves, they go through the body, they are sensed when they bounce back, and they create an image It's analyzed, it's brought in, it's assessed, and it's displayed to the end user, who tends to be a physician. The adjacent growth applications then went to components for magnetic resonant imaging, MRIs, and then more recently to mammography, ultrasound technology. So they're leveraging subsystems and electronics to these different applications. And, they all need a power management system. They all need a scan control system. They all need that data management and conversion system. And then the images are reconstructed on chips and then brought up into the rest of the system. This is strictly an OEM business for analogics. Their name is not on the piece of medical equipment. That's probably the case for most of you as well. So I was teaching my innovation class, where we learn about how to leverage technologies to new market applications that are adjacent to what a company is doing now. Steve was one of my good students. He said, "Steve, you can't get an A in the class if you just do a better CT scanning system. You need to find a new market application." And this was in 2001. We had the great terrorist attack, and all of a sudden the government wanted to have all the baggage scanned at the airports. And not in 5 years, but literally within 9 months. So Steve came up with a strategy for leveraging their technology for medical scanning and applied it to baggage scanning. You can see that on the right. And at first this was OEM, designed into large manufacturers, but then they took it and created their own brand. You can see the branding that kind of looks like an aircraft engine on the upper right, which is a nice brand analogy, isn't it, if you're selling it to airports. But that is a baggage screener or scanner. And you can see the software underneath. And now Steve, if you look it up, is the CTO of the entire company. That's what this can do for people when you leverage technology to new market applications. Here's another well-known example in New England. This is a $6 billion a year company called Analog Devices. It's a great company. It's been around for a long time. This one is not as focused. It is really broad in what it does. It's cross-industry. It started off analog devices, analog signals. Then it went into mixed analog and digital, then DSPs, and now it's a leader in developing special purpose application systems on chip. So they now have over 45,000 different products. Isn't that amazing? And the market's all listed on the left. This is adjacent growth, all these different applications. And then the products that they sell and combine into these markets are listed on the right. It started with A to D converters, and now it's gone to all sorts of things. The growth areas are in video, really high growth areas, in audio conversion. Power controls has always been strong. Optical communications and sensing, power management with a new generation of energy efficient devices, really a big deal for the company. And the list goes on. So this is a company that has exploded in terms of its adjacent applications. And it doesn't have an analog device brand on the shelf in a store. It's all designed in to the brand holders. So if we step back and then summarize, if you're looking to scale and grow your business, be like Steve. Find that next adjacent growth and leverage your technology to it in a way that's feasible and reasonable. Or if you have access to a lot of capital and really interested investors, you can go for the even greater gusto. I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar company that over 30 years has built up a product portfolio that cuts across literally all markets in the semiconductor industry. Now, it is not competing directly with Samsung or the Taiwanese or Chinese companies. It's not competing with the Dutch company. It is focused on a tier down below with much more specific applications. And for me, this is what is most relevant for you folks as you move forward. So now let's go to point number 2, which is to push design inside your company. As soon as something is done, you got to make it better. So underneath it says create, and through your attorneys, protect your secret sauce. So the example that I'm going to use in this in semiconductors is Philips LED. I've worked with Philips for a number of years. Myself, as an innovation consultant, last year they spun off, based on what their consultants told them to do, I guess. They split up the great Philips company into different business units. And they took the LED business and they renamed it Signify. So it is the world's leader in premium LED lighting. That's what it does. And very much like my student Jerry in Vaisala, the weather monitoring company, if you look what's going on inside of Signify, over the years it has gone from indoor lighting to outdoor lighting, and gone from incandescent to entirely LED lighting. And then through the LEDs, to power them, and they're so low energy, you can power them with Ethernet, power over Ethernet, to connect these things and give each LED printed circuit board an IP address and start adding sensors onto that board. So it's just not light, but it is light plus. And so this is a semiconductor company that's going. It's going with a special application LEDs and lighting, going down the pathway of value-added systems and data services. Really interesting company. It's about $10 billion a year now in revenue, and it's just grown very, very quickly over the last decade. So to double down on design, you first have to start with who are the users in your markets or your adjacent markets. So here's a little template that I like to use, which is we have a picture of the target user, and then we describe who they are, what their major problems are, and what their purchase behaviors are. And then when we design things to them, what needs to be must-haves in those designs, and then what are the add-on features that can also be sold. Again, whether you are a mentor or the entrepreneur, you need to have a clear, specific description of what the target end user needs and how that impacts the product that's being developed, whether it's an end user product or a design into somebody else's product. So in the lighting example, here's one target user. This is the outdoor lighting manager. I've worked with the company and thinking about this over the years, but these people might manage 20, 30,000 streetlights in a city. And if you look at what their jobs have been, it's all been paper-based with spreadsheets and not a lot of control over what's going on across their lights. Somebody has to call up and say that a light is not functioning. And the lights are single-purpose and not multi-purpose. And if you think about what can happen with a next-generation light post, you can monitor traffic, air pollution. You can, in the United States, unfortunately, you can monitor gunshots in certain urban crime areas. There's a lot that you can do once you have a light and it's connected to the internet. As a completely different persona, here's a building office manager. And what she's worried about is energy and energy savings. She's worried about space utilization. If this was a conference room and these lights were connected, it would know whether I was here or not. And what's the hardest thing to do inside of any company? It's to find a conference room to have a meeting in. And often those meetings are booked and nobody actually shows up. And meanwhile, somebody like this lady here, this woman, who's the office manager, the financial manager, she's paying for that space. And she wants to have it used much more efficiently. The other really, really cool thing about connected LEDs now is that now people are sharing office spaces, shared office spaces. So you can now tune the lighting and even the computer systems based on LEDs, based on who is walking into that office space. either by appointment or by scanning their badge, and then tune that shared space to their preference. So you look at this person versus this person, they're completely different. But yet the same company can make systems and technology that can serve both. So then you build the platform up to a certain level, and then you differentiate it for the end application. So let's now talk about that, and this is point number 3. How to build enabling platforms to achieve R&D and scale efficiencies. That means if you have a base level customer or use, and you want to leverage it to a new market application, an adjacent opportunity, you don't want to take 2 years to do it. You need to go inside underneath the hood, so to speak, look at those nuggets of common technology, generalize them, and then leverage them into the new market applications to pilot them and grow them. So this is where we get into a discussion of standard designs versus peak designs or special purpose designs. Everything that you folks have probably been doing in your company today has been a special purpose design. Now you need to think about standard designs as the majority of the work you do, where you take the system, common technology up the stack, and then vary it at the endpoints or in the specific code or electronics design to make it suit that specific application. My student Steve did not invent an entirely new set of semiconductor electronics to create the airport security system because he had to do it really fast. It was a crisis in the United States because of the bombing. So he leveraged what they already had working and then added value to it to get into his pilot tests. And now it's a major part of the company. So when we think about platforms, you've got to think about hardware and software. This is a picture of Tesla, and I'm really glad that Hyundai is competing with Tesla. Somebody has to compete with Tesla. And Hyundai is coming on strong, all the power to them. And if you look at the subsystems inside of an electric vehicle, on the upper left is the driver control system. You look over to the right, there's the electric motors. A Tesla has 2 of them in the rear wheels. They're really fast, faster than a combustion car, engine car. And then you have the power supply, which is at the bottom there on the right. And those are batteries. So Tesla makes great, efficient batteries. All the Korean companies are very much into battery design and power management. Many of you are probably making subsystems to interface between the actual batteries and the rest of the vehicle. It's a very big deal, power management. And then and the key to success for Tesla, by the way, is that Elon Musk had his engineers array them along the chassis of the car. So it has a nice, firm, tight ride, whereas before, General Motors and others either had them stacked in the front of the car or in the back of the car, which made the car uneven or top-heavy. And then on the lower left is that's an Apple Watch, but it's supposed to represent software. And now software is everything inside these electric vehicles. And the interface between the software and the hardware and all the electronics involved in that, it is obviously very, very special. And so you have all these different platforms coming into play. You have the driver control, you have the motors, you have the powertrain, you have the power supply, and you have the software subsystems throughout. And so when you think about what a car now is, it's a packaging of these various subsystems to meet a specific purpose. So in Tesla, they have 2 or 3 different vehicles now, different price points, but they're not reinventing the software for every single product. They're reusing that software. So when they improve that software, it spreads across the whole product line. Same thing with the batteries. They're shared assets platform across the entire product line. So now, let's go down to the and here's the basic architecture picture. For you mentors and you entrepreneurs, you should articulate what the major subsystems are inside of your product Even if it's a semiconductor, what are the different subsystems within what you're building? And then what are the specific design points you're trying to achieve within those subsystems and how they match up to either the OEM or the end user's requirements at that level of the functionality. Template, but you can fill this in and complete it for where your company is moving ahead in the future. So this is what it's like inside of the LED business. So we sat down and we laid out what is the architecture of LED-based systems, whether they're interior or exterior, in a retail store, in a hotel, all different applications. What's the same about them? So we came up with the diodes, the printed circuit boards, the power management system, and all the electronics around those. And then the things that were differentiated by application was how the system looked, the housing, some of the operating controls. Now they're common in software, but at the time they were different. Now they're the same. And a lot of it can be done just over a mobile app. And then the software analytics were different by segment, but now there's a common platform for the software. I'll show it to you in a second. It's called Interact. So if I look at that stack, level 5 and level 6 are now pretty much dark shaded platforms as well. And the only thing that's different is the exterior, how it looks, the housing, and the exterior optics, the lenses. Then Signify's created assemblies. You can see the printed circuit board, and then they go into different types of housings up above, and then you can see the software and data on the right. Each one of these is platform. It has its own layers of technology which are then brought together, and at the very end the software is tuned for the different types of user display by segment, or the housing is tuned for what somebody in Europe wants versus Asia versus the United States, for what their light post is supposed to look like. A very logical way of designing a business. And then in all this now, when it comes to semiconductors and going up the stack, we think about the IoT architecture, which is the sensors, the alerting through software, the analysis and how to initiate a response, an entire workflow. So the IoT architecture is the value that's added on top of electronics now when we get into a range of industrial and medical and transportation applications. So I'll show you a quick picture just to kind of, and then you go to the next generation. This is the latest thing that Signify is bringing onto the market. This is the smart lamppost. It's called Light Sights. And if you were them, you'd probably do the same thing. You think about loading up onto a semiconductor electronics for 5G, for the next gen Wi-Fi 6. You know, the range of sensor and data applications coming onto this are rather remarkable in terms of traffic monitoring and air pollution. We'll see these in Seoul, I'm sure, whether it's from Signify or somebody else, where the city will be amplified and censored based on these connected LED systems for outdoor lighting. So now we go to our last topic, which is the hardest topic. It's the one that is least certain. If we were to sit down together with your companies, mentors, or you entrepreneurs, if we were to have lunch together, I have no doubt that we could identify adjacent growth strategies. I have no doubt that we could dig in deeply into user needs and how your OEMs think about those needs and come up with compelling designs. I have no doubt, since all of you are technical, that we would have a lot of fun over Makali designing a platform strategy to create common building blocks that we can leverage across these scale-up, differentiated market applications. No, that's the easy part. That's the fun part. Fun to describe, fun to plan, takes hard work to do, but it's all very doable. This is the hard part. This is to develop strategic sales partnerships with much bigger companies who are naturally skeptical about small startup companies. And if you're doing partnerships to reach OEMs in the United States, such as Analogics or other companies like that, or the car companies in the United States, or Philips Medical, or GE Medical in the United States, and you're from Korea, how do you make it happen? That's the challenge. So let's just look at it. The first thing that you have to do, and by the way, by strategic marketing partnerships, you can look at any semiconductor electronics company that's large and successful, and you'll see on any of their websites, you'll see their connections. We go to Samsung under Tizen and all their partnerships, and we'll see the same thing. This is just comes from the from Signify, the Dutch company's partnerships page. There's only a small part of its page, but there's a dozen major partners who cover different spaces around the world, such as connecting it to your Nest Home management systems company, or SmartThings, or in China, Huawei, and this is another Dutch company, KPN. Here's the German company. And then you'll also see that they develop pieces of software, whether to assess firmware or to assess database or other types of higher level software that are programming interfaces. So this is Signify's Interact IoT platform. It's a general purpose programming library that provides secure access to the data coming off of its LED sensors, off of its lights. So a number of third parties then program in different market spaces to build applications to use that data to then provide greater value. Signify being primarily a hardware company, there's no way that it could come up with a myriad of specific software applications needed to serve its customers, and therefore building other third-party companies around you as a company to go forward in the marketplace can be incredibly powerful. And so this is what is the marketplace for your company? Can you build a marketplace is the question. Then how do you market that marketplace is another question. This is how a small company scales up and looks bigger than it is by itself. So the first thing you need to do, if this is the goal, to have major partnerships with big companies already in the market space, and then get other smaller companies to work with you through your software that accesses the features of your hardware, that becomes like an end goal. Then you need to say, I'm going to go abroad to grow. You first need to really understand the market and the industrial ecosystem in that market in which you wish to grow. So this is an example from a major growth area for semiconductors. This is home medical equipment. If you see on the upper left here, this is the NX stage home dialysis machine. This is incredibly hot right now. The reason is, it's right on this slide. The total market size just in the United States is $98 billion a year in all the costs associated with chronic kidney disease. That's CKD. Almost $100 billion a year. And the average cost per patient is almost $100,000 per year. And what happens is that almost 3/4 of the patients crash. That means they don't get their dialysis on time. And now that percentage is going up even more because of COVID. Patients don't want to go into a dialysis center. They have over 30 million users who could potentially use a machine like this in their home, just in the United States. So if you were making a semiconductor to enable this application, and you want to come to the United States, you would have to understand that there's a company called NX Stage, which is looking to make its machines even better. It's going after this huge market opportunity. You understand the importance of the system because of, look at this, a 30% death rate by people who do not get proper dialysis. Over 4 million people are untreated. just an incredible marketplace. And then you would go in and partner together to say, our chip, our power management system, our communication system is really will enable a very, very powerful solution. They already went ahead and did this. They have their first gen done. It was sold to Fresenius, which is like a $35 billion German but global healthcare systems company. And the actual application that came out is here's a gentleman having home dialysis, looking on their iPad where the signals are being connected through Bluetooth to show the patient what's going on with the cleaning of their own blood, and then it's being connected through the cloud to clinicians with security protocols and all the like. Now, if you look at this, the semiconductor forecast, even under this environment, is still going to grow by 5 or 6% because COVID is forcing more and more people to stay out of the hospital and get their medical treatments at home. It's a major growth opportunity. So this is but one example. So I think about what is the template? How do we think about this? So I'm going to assume that since this is a scale-up session, that all of you have an initial test application in Korea. If you don't, you need one. You got to prove yourself in Korea, and then you can go abroad. Because those large OEMs abroad, they're not going to just deal with an initial startup. They're going to want to see a proof here where your technology is working. That's the majority of the situations. But then where do you go next? Is it to China? Now, you all know the incredible market size, for example, in electric vehicles or energy management systems and the like in China, but you also know the risks in terms of technology, security. The United States now is a great market for medical. Oh my goodness. It's going to be a great market for transportation. It's going to be a great market for a lot of things, but not this year, not next year, because of the mess that we put ourselves into with our leadership. What a mess. So there'll be certain, if you're going to do energy and environment as your primary focus for your applications, well, you know, you got Europe. So I guess if it's car, connected car, and consumer electronics, you do Asia. That's your end application. If it's medical and AI and special, inference engines on chips to make things smart, there's a lot of action in the United States still. It's just growing. Cloud infrastructure, United States. Energy, environment, smart buildings. Take a trip to Signify. Go to Amsterdam. That's where the action is. That's where the money is. Schneider. I can think of the companies there, Schneider. Great company. So where you go next all depends on what you're doing. So then you find about who are the key players. What are the specific use cases over on the left? Is it in a building? Is it for the elevators? Is it for in the office? Is it on the outside of the building? What is it? Think of the use cases, and then look at what your system does and where you're focused, and then who are the competitors there? What's the growth rate in that? And that's where you go, and that becomes your target. And then you need some introduction. You basically have three options. The first option is you can get lucky, which means you go to a trade show. Whenever trade shows come back into being again after COVID, and you exhibit in your booth, and the right people walk by at that trade show, and you become friends for life and business partners. That's what happened to me in my first company, in my first software company, and it led to some very, very, really big deal that went on for many, many years. But we were lucky. We were lucky. You can be lucky too. The second option, and I'll call it the Israeli model, is you can create a sales office in the United States or in Europe. And you can hire some local salespeople. You can try and stay in touch with what they're doing, give them the right incentive. A fully loaded salesperson in the United States is probably $300,000 a year. And watch out for the cell phone bills and the like. And if you hire the right people, you might achieve success. The hardest thing to do in a technology company is not the engineering. It's not finding the finance people, it's finding the right salespeople. Very difficult to find the right salespeople for your company. The third option is to find an independent sales rep. And there, you need to find somebody or a group of people who have worked in the industry for their entire careers, know everybody in their little Rolodex on their cell phone, can get you in to meet with decision makers and have your hour to present what you have, and they'll help you try to do a deal. Trade shows, build your own sales office like the Israelis, or find an independent sales rep. 3 options that I know of. And so you, with your mentors and you entrepreneurs, your advisors, you need to decide which one you can do, which one you can afford to do, which one makes the most sense. Do not discount the helpfulness of a sales rep for getting started down this path. And if you find a sales rep, it shouldn't just be somebody who speaks Korean. That should not be their criteria. A Korean who's moved to the United States. It should be a business person who has done business with Asian companies, who has 20, 30 years of experience in the industry that you're trying to get into, be it, again, if it's in China, in Europe, or the United States. So that is what I want to share with you in terms of the importance of going abroad, is to find out who you can do business with that is an industry leader in that market segment and in that geography. And to do that, you need connections into those companies, and these are the ways that they can be made. So that is the end of what I want to share with you today. Let me say kamsahamnida. Thank you very much. My name again is Mark Meyer. I work with James Lee and Mr. Che, my good friends at the KICT Mentoring Center in Pangyo in Sungnam. And my email is just my name, markhmeyer@gmail.com. Good luck for all of you. Just think about the future. Don't sell into a down market. Look for those niche opportunities that are growing rapidly. You know that over the next 2 or 3 years, once we come out of this COVID-induced recession, that they're going to have really strong growth. And you want to ride that tide with your specific technology and make sure that it's patented and protected as best you can. And then go try and do deals with the big companies. And if I can help you, send an email and contact James Lee, and we'll try and help you moving forward. So thank you very much once again, and that will be the end of our session.